All right, welcome back to Lost for Words with Lori. It is Monday, May 8th, 2023. It has been a hot fucking minute. It's been 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since I have last spoken at all of yous here at the Heathen's Haven. It has been crazy chaos in my world, what with packing and trying to get moving and wow, all this chaos that is my world lately. So I hope everyone is doing all right. It has been pretty crazy. May has started off pretty good. Boy, I'll tell you, just crazy chaos, man, in my world. Like I said, I closed on my house at the end of April. I have keys. I have been moving things in stages. I'm trying to get packed up and planned for getting everything out of this apartment and getting into my new house. But I'll tell you, it's been really great and feeling pretty good about my accomplishment on that front, and still trying to manage to work and take care of all of the things and still go out and do the things with my new guy, who is pretty fucking amazing. And just, do all the things that, people do and crazy things, right? So I hope everyone is doing all right. I wanted to talk about some things that I've been thinking about. That's what Mondays are all about, Monday musings that I do on my other social media platform. Because, there's always things going on. And, one of the things that I was thinking about, because I've been doing, my podcast for, a year and a half, and I've always been kind of on the end of giving people a lot of coaching and advice, and been on the other end of accountability and talking to other people and holding other people accountable for behavior and for things, and giving people advice in that area. And it's kind of crazy when you sit back and start thinking about holding yourself accountable. And one of the things that I've been doing on my own, healing journey and my own life path is being able to hold myself accountable and having my own self accountability. And basically, I've been thinking about my responsibility for holding myself accountable. And the communication piece of that, especially with everything that's been going on in the last 2 months with my, new relationship, and with holding myself accountable in the areas of communication and accountability for that and where that sits, especially as you talk with other people and you start realizing that you still have to hold yourself accountable for all of the things that go on in your first world, as far as I'm involved in new things, new situations with new people, especially as it pertains to my new relationship. And while it's all fun and fine and dandy to want to spend all, of your free time with a new person, you still have accountability to your job and to adulting. And, like I said, I have these responsibilities for this move and to take care of all of my first world responsibilities and bills and everything else. And I still have to hold myself accountable for those things. And it is my responsibility to communicate to all of the people in my first world, whether it's, my new boyfriend or my friends or my family or, my coworkers or whatever, all of the things that I have going on in my world and what my expectations are, or my needs, or what it is that I need to fulfill the things that I'm responsible for. And it's kind of one of those things where you go back to all of the fundamentals of the things that you're responsible for and what it is that you need to communicate to other people, and where your accountabilities lie. And one of the things that I was thinking about this morning is, it's allowing other people to own their own accountabilities while you're communicating your needs and your wants and your expectations to the people around you. And make sure that your needs and your expectations are reasonable, but still respecting that your own, theirs and your own boundaries and expectations, and make sure that they're still realistic. And I guess it was kind of one of those things where, I had to sit back at a lot of points over the last couple of months and think about whether or not my expectations are too rigid, where I need to compromise my expectations, because I've been in a situation where for the last 18 months, it's just been me. And I haven't had to compromise anything. If I want something, I get it. If I need something, I can ask for it. If everything that I've ever had to think about is basically just been me. Well, and of course, my stupid little bird, which, his needs and wants are pretty basic because he's a bird. But I haven't had to compromise anything that I've wanted or needed, because it's just been me. And when you throw somebody else into that mix, there's going to be a reasonable amount of compromise. And when you have somebody else who is in your space or, in your world, then there's certain amount of compromise that goes with that. And then you have to start rethinking your expectations, especially when you get into a relationship with somebody, about allowing other people to own their own accountability for whether or not there's a reasonable amount of expectation, and whether it's realistic, what those expectations are. And to be fair, that happens in life in general, whether it's friends, whether it's romantic relationships, whether it's family. And so while you have expectations about what you expect, the way people treat you, the way people behave, and what your boundaries are, when is it realistic for you to have expectations about how accountable other people need to be for what they say and what they do? And I guess that's one of the things that I was thinking about, was when you communicate certain things to people about what your expectations are, and when you tell them what your needs are or what you want or how you expect them to communicate, at what point do your expectations become realistic or unrealistic when you hold them accountable for what they communicate back to you and what they say. And, to be reasonably fair, when you are transparent about what your expectations are and your communications are, and when people aren't used to that because maybe their life is the same or they've lived that same expectation or that same life, there's always going to be a feeling out period. There's always going to be a particular point where everybody has to get used to learning a new feeling out period of where you're not used to that and you don't know what that looks like. And it's uncomfortable because, like I said, it's just been me for 18 months. And if I need something, want something, or whatever, I just do it. And so when you have to take somebody else's schedule or somebody else's needs or wants or thoughts or feelings into perspective, or you have to take that into account, it changes the dynamic of everything, because you have to basically step back and everybody does things different. If I want to go to the store, I just go to the store. But if you make plans to do something with somebody else, then you have to change your schedule. It's not instantaneous anymore. It's not at your whim anymore. It's not on your schedule anymore. And so therefore, you have to compromise. You have to compromise your time. You have to make plans. You have to do those things. And I guess the thought process is that I'm kind of a control freak in my own environment. So when people tell you reasonably that you're going to do something at a specific time, or you make plans to do something, and a wrench gets thrown into that because life happens and things are fluid and they don't go as planned, at what point do you hold people accountable for those things, even if things happen that are beyond anybody's control? And then you're able to shift, change, and evolve and roll with the punches because things and shit happens. And that's fine. I'm not rigid and unrealistic that, shit happens. And I get that. That's not what I'm saying. Accountability being that when you start recognizing patterns of things that seem to be consistently happening or shifting or changing, or excuses or something like to that effect, and you start recognizing maybe a pattern of things, then at what point do you start saying, or recognizing, or in the back of your head saying, well, maybe I need to communicate that the expectation is there, that this is possibly not necessarily a red flag, but maybe becoming a problematic issue of either a lack of communication, or that there's a realistic expectation that when somebody repeatedly tells you that this is the way things are going to be, but yet things keep repeatedly becoming a problem or a pattern of letdown, or the expectation isn't happening over and over, then there's a feeling of disappointment. And nobody likes to be disappointed. Is that a me problem, or is it a them problem? Is it an unrealistic expectation, or is it reasonable that when somebody tells you that they're going to follow through with something and then they repeatedly don't, whose problem is it? Do you know what I'm saying? And I guess when you're used to basically making shit happen, because you're one of those people who consistently makes things happen, and you're always one of those things, well, if you want something done right, you do it yourself, and that's the best way to get things accomplished, is because you can't count on other people, and when you give people an opportunity to follow through and make things happen, but then they repeatedly or appear to have a consistent pattern of not following through, and you're starting to feel disappointed, at what point is it reasonable to either A, hold them accountable, or to B, point out that you're starting to recognize a pattern without making them feel like you have an unreasonable expectation, if that makes any sense. And again, it's just one of those things that you think about because you don't know when you're into something newer, or you're learning to communicate on a different level, but you want to continue to remain transparent and communicate openly, and not have anything be assumed, and not worry about not being as open and honest as you should be at all times. But you also don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You also don't want to appear that you're not being open and honest at all times. You don't want, but you don't want to, I don't want to appear that I have an unrealistic expectation at any time either. But I also don't like the feeling of setting myself up for failure, or setting myself up for disappointment, or feeling like I'm doing something wrong, or I'm not expressing my needs or desire to have whatever it is that I'm not getting met in that manner. I guess I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to communicate sometimes when you're not used to knowing exactly what it is that the outcome is that you need. So I guess I'm confused sometimes about accountability and where it sits. Is it a me problem? Is it a them problem? Or is it a us problem? If that makes any sense. All I know is that I enjoy sharing the journey with another human, but at the same time, it's still sometimes outside my comfort zone to understand what consistency is about, and sharing accountability and responsibility with more than myself. And sometimes that's a little scary, because you don't want to recognize or share fear, especially if there isn't any, and you don't want to worry or make mountains out of molehills, especially if there aren't any. Tell me what you think. What do you think about accountability? What do you think about communication? What do you think about responsibility in that? Um, is it selfish? Is it selfless? Where's the line? But as always, guys, wash your fucking hands and be a good human. I love y'all.